There is a new free-to-play extraction shooter that's currently in development, and in the shallow lake that is extraction shooters, I'm not seeing anything new or revolutionary to the genre, and more so from this game. What we're talking about today is Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders is a free-to-play third-person extraction shooter being developed by Embark Studios, and is planned to be released sometime later this year. But with what we're going to cover, that release date may end up getting pushed back into 2024. Embark is made up of former DICE developers who are now making their own games. And if the studio sounds somewhat familiar, it's because they're also working on another game, The Finals. I already have a few videos of The Finals, so if you're interested in seeing what's going on there, you can check those out. Going back to Arc Raiders, it was originally planned to be a PvE looter shooter kind of game with a planned PvP mode. And in my honest opinion, I feel we need more well-made looter shooters that we can all enjoy. However, that idea went out the window during development, and they decided to shift focus to make Arc Raiders a full-on PvPvE extraction shooter. This change to the game was done while developing for the original PvP mode, and the developers had a lot of fun putting it together that it ended up turning into an extraction shooter. Extraction shooters is a genre that hasn't been fully explored, and there aren't that many examples of it, with the only standout game being Escape from Tarkov. There are a few other titles that play similarly, such as Hunt Showdown and Marauders, but nothing has really taken the spotlight away from EFT. Enter Arc Raiders, a looter shooter PvE type of game being redesigned to include PvP elements, where you are always at risk of losing any gear you take with you into the world. Before we continue, if you enjoy my videos, please give this one a like, and if you want to see more videos more often, please consider subscribing, it really helps me out. Embark Studios has started a playtest on June 29th through Steam, and I was fortunate enough to be randomly selected to play the game. And if you're wondering why there isn't any gameplay of it on screen, it's because the playtest is under NDA. So while I can't really show anything specific for Arc Raiders, I just have to say I'm not sold on this game. I always try to explain my biases so you know where I'm coming from. I'm not a big fan of online PvP third-person shooters. I can play them every now and then, but I tend to prefer playing in first person, which of course would be a big disadvantage if I could do that in any third-person game. The good thing is, the game will be free to play, so there's not much that the game needs to sell me on. But the way these developers were talking about how much better it was to go in this direction, it just feels like they made an extraction shooter because they could. Now the game is still early in development and things can change, but if you're hoping or waiting for some standout, never before seen gameplay mechanic that puts a twist on the extraction shooter and makes it all worthwhile, I don't think you're going to find it here. At least not right now with what we were given. Make no mistake though, Embark Studios has some very dedicated and hardworking developers, as they are working on two completely different games at the same time. So anything can happen, and Arc Raiders may just have a few aces up their sleeve. I personally feel extraction shooters should have the ability to play both cautiously with all the suspense and creeping around and waiting for the right moment to strike, and also have certain less risky, maybe even non-PvP type of areas or game modes that allows players to just jump in and have fun without any real risk. You know, enjoy the loot you guys actually spend so much time obtaining without feeling like it's going to be ripped away. Or maybe even have this section as an alternative way to build up loadouts that would be more effective than just dropping back in with a pistol. The main issue with extraction shooters is that they're essentially like playing a mini MMO. There are a ton of items, resources, currencies, and weapons to grind for, and figuring out how it all works, but the PvP side of things tends to just be as broken as some MMO PvPs. I'm looking at you, Destiny 2. Or we end up with something like Call of Duty's DMZ mode, where there isn't really any risk at all, just very minor setbacks. I feel the quote-unquote perfect extraction shooter, if one were to exist, is one that can be played like a looter shooter, and one that can be slowed down with all the risks that you would expect. Extraction shooters expects the player to just jump in with whatever subpar gear they have, and somehow survive and maybe even outgun another player or two that may or may not have gear that's better than your own. And it's that gameplay loop that really frustrates me. Either the game is too basic, which means I'm playing slowly to gain a few items, but if I die it doesn't really matter, or everything is on the line and I could end up going bankrupt. It's either too much one way or the other, and with Arc Raiders it doesn't really seem like it's trying to do anything different. Now these kind of games do have some measures to help bail out players who can't seem to catch a break, which is great, but I would much rather be put in an active position where I can re-earn some amount of gear, without having to be at risk of losing whatever I have left. It doesn't feel good to get a bailout package, I did nothing to deserve it, but it's either I take that or I go in with nothing, not engage with anything, and build up whatever scrap I can for a few games before I can go back to playing normally. For me, when it comes to extraction shooters, I enjoyed Hunt Showdown. There really isn't a risk of playing that game, so players can just focus on playing 1 or 2 rounds, survive or maybe even beat the lobby, grab the weapons and gear they actually want, and carry on with playing normally. The combat is also fairly balanced as players, even well-kitted ones, don't have a lot of health to work with. So even if you're starting with barely anything good, you still have a good chance of winning a fight. You also get the ability to purchase or receive a new character and loadout after each death, and you may just look out with one that has the kind of kit you want. I just stopped playing the game because I don't really care for the gunplay. There's no meaningful weapon crafting, which is something I really want from an extraction shooter, and the location is in a haunted swamp. I can only play the game for so long before I can no longer tolerate AI enemies screaming at me all the time and making unpleasant sounds. Anyways, enough of that rant. Arc Raiders may have some kind of new element that could draw players in, but I just haven't seen it yet. I do wish the best for Embark Studios. I think they are a very talented bunch, and I'm sure they can think of something to make this game stand out, even if the answer is to revert it back to a looter shooter, temporary or otherwise. So I know it's early for this game, but I always want to know, what do you guys think about all of this? Are you excited for Arc Raiders, or do you think the direction they're taking isn't what you want? Let me know and let's talk about it in the comments below. Until then, I am Mr. Rain, and I will see you guys next time.